All right, so we're going to take notes on a couple pieces of art at the same time. So these are both from the Indigenous America unit. Number 158 is Ruler's Feather Headdress. This is Aztec, 1428 to 1520. And this is made mostly feathers, and then there's also gold. And then on the right, number 162 is the Altocapu tunic, and this is Inca. And the dates are right around the same as the Ruler's Feather Headdress, 1450 to 1540. Those are also the same dates as Machu Picchu. We can also relate to Inca. And the materials here are camelid fiber and cotton. All right, so just a reminder, on the left are our Aztec artworks. So you have the Templo Mayor and then all of the other artworks that were found in or around Templo Mayor. And then for Inca, we have the city of Cusco, where the maize cob was also found in the garden of Coricancha. And then you have Machu Picchu, and then we have the Altocapu tunic. All right, so function of both of these. Obviously, a headdress is going to be something worn on the head, and this would have been worn on the head of the ruler. There's some speculation that the ruler was Montezuma, but there's no real proof. But you could see that in the title of the piece in a multiple choice question. That used to be part of the identifying information. All right, and then function of the tunic, this is a textile, like fabric. So this would have been worn by people living in the royal household, or it would have been burned as a sacrifice to the sun god Inti, which relates back to the Inca culture and their beliefs. All right, I like this picture on the left. This is another art history teacher who went and saw this. If you go to Mexico, there's the replica, or the real one is in Austria. So I'm not sure which one she's looking at, but it gives you a good sense of scale, right? So form, this is more than 3 feet tall and 69 inches wide. It would have been part of a costume. So you got to keep in mind, when we view these pieces, they're very static in museums, but there would have been movement involved with the wind hitting all these feathers. They would have been fluttering. The light would be shimmering off them because they're kind of iridescent. And then there would probably be some sort of a cape and more props included in this overall costume. And then here's how you would wear the tunic. I think of like an old Western poncho sort of thing. There's a slit in the top for the head. So it's a single piece of cloth that's been folded over. And there's a slit in the center for the head. It's folded over and sewn down the sides, but there's openings on the top of the sides for your arms to come out. All right, so the animals involved in the production of this. With the headdress, you have 2 animals. You have the cotinga bird, where the turquoise feathers are from, but that's very minuscule. The majority of it is made from the quetzal tail feathers. So if you look at this quetzal, there's only 2 tail feathers. So imagine the amount of birds they would have had to pluck the feathers from to create this headdress. There's about 400 of these feathers that have been used, and these feathers also only come from the male bird. All right, camelid, we've heard that word before, right? The camelid sacrum. It's a type of llama or alpaca, which are really common in the Andean mountains where the Inca people live. So the Altocapu tunic is made of dyed camelid wool, and then a weaving is a warp and a weft. Your warp lines go vertical, and then your weft is what you are weaving back and forth through your warp. So it would have had dyed camelid wool warp over a cotton weft, which is a combination for high status textiles. All right, so how do these both demonstrate power? You could think about the materials, you could think about the size. What have we already talked about that would exude power if you saw somebody wearing these? So here's a really good painting of someone wearing the headdress and the costume, and it looks like they're meeting, the invading Spanish people coming in. You even have Templo Mayor in the back. All right, so overall, this would have added height to the wearer, just like the roof comb added onto the Yaxchilan architecture, added height to those buildings. It makes you look up, right? So by adding height, it makes someone more powerful, more intimidating. And then, of course, the materials. The materials are really rare. If something takes a long time, if materials are expensive, that is going to exude power. So Also, the way they got these materials was through conquering territories. So if you were conquered by the Aztecs, you had to pay them like some sort of a tribute or a tax, and they would be paid in these feathers. So it's important to know that these were acquired by conquered territories, paying taxes or tribute to the Aztecs. All right, so the Inca Altocapu tunic, the tokapu, that word, that's the square geometric designs or motifs. That's what the tokapu refers to. These specific designs were only allowed to be worn by those of high rank in the Inca society. So it's like a code. It's kind of talking about their ancestry, it's talking about their clan, and it's overall talking about their high status. Just like there's an artwork in the Pacific unit, it's a painting by Gottfried Lindauer. Here it is, and it's called Tamati Wakanene, and he has these tattoos that wrap around his face, and it's kind of codes. They're all talking about his ancestry, talking about his clan, talking about his accomplishments, but we can't read that because we don't understand what those symbols mean. Same thing here for this Inca Altocapu tunic. Oh, and they are made by chosen women. So when we talked about the city of Cuzco, that is the capital of the Inca Empire, and people were taken from all over the empire to live in the city of Cuzco. Men were brought there to be educated, and women were brought there. These chosen women were brought there for different reasons. Some were brought there to be taught how to be a wife, and then they had to marry the Inca elite. They were also brought there to use the corn, the maize, right, to turn it into beer to use for ceremonies and rituals. And they were brought there to create these weavings. This is a painting by Diego Rivera, who's famous for being the cheating husband of Frida Kahlo, but he also did paintings of indigenous people from Mexico. All right, so chosen women were collected across the Inca Empire to weave cloth that were collected as part of the Inca taxation system. So very relatable to the Mexico tributes and taxes, right? People had to pay taxes to the elite people of the empire. So overall, this is a statement of dominion over the land, the people, and the resources. Only the elite would be wearing these to show that they had power over everybody else. And overall, these textiles were valued as wealth. All right, some more context, just some background on this headdress. So Cortez comes to Mexico with the Spanish army and conquers the Aztecs in 1521. He's never seen, or the Spanish have never seen anything like this being produced over in Europe, right? They made lots of artworks using feathers. So what he does is he sends feathered objects back to Spain, including this feathered headdress. Somehow it ends up in Vienna, Austria, which is where it is today. You don't need to write this, but over the last century and a half, the headdress has become an important touchstone for Mexican national and indigenous identity, and many Mexicans think it should be returned. Representatives and activists from Mexico have continuously made requests for its repatriation, like returning. But despite a deal almost struck in 2011, the Austrian authorities have as yet refused to officially allow the loan or return of the headdress to Mexico, claiming that the trip across the Atlantic would be too risky for the fragile object. So they're saying for the good of the object, it's going to stay there. But this is going to be an issue we're going to hear a lot about as we talk about other non-Western places being colonized and then the artwork being stolen and taken and then everybody wanting their stuff back. All right, go to your Pacific unit, take out number 215. We're going to take some notes on the Ahu'ula feather cape from Hawaii because it's easily relatable to both of these two pieces, and I'm freaking out that we're not going to get to do the Pacific unit. So let's write this right now. So overall, the Ahu'ula feathered cape is worn by chiefs. It has a symmetrical design, so it's the same on both sides. You can easily relate that to the feather headdress. That is the same on both sides. The tunic, I believe as well. Maybe some of the designs aren't in the exact same spot, but overall it's pretty symmetrical. All right, so the patterns, like the designs that are being made out of the feathers, this is just one example of an Ahu'ula cape. There'd be several examples, and the patterning of the yellow and the red feathers would be different. They would all reflect the chief's ancestry and clan. So it's kind of like reading a secret language, just like reading the Altokapu tunic would be reading a secret language, or reading the Tamati Wakanene's tattoos on number 220 in the Pacific unit is reading this hidden code language, like glyphs. All right, materials. There's about 500 to 800,000 feathers used to make each cape. So again, there's this idea of rare, exclusive, sacred materials being used. Birds are also really valued because they're closer, they're in the sky, they're closer to heaven, they're closer to the gods. All right, so overall, how does this reflect power? And here's two different examples of chiefs that would be wearing these capes. So the colors red and yellow are symbolic. Red is the color of kings or gods. In Europe, it's purple, but this is a Pacific artwork specifically from Hawaii. So red is the color of kings or gods. Yellow is very valuable because those feathers were so scarce. All right, mana. If you did your notes on 220 for Tamani Wakanene, that was the first introduction to mana. So mana is like the power. You would have this power based on your ancestry. If you were closer to the gods, you would have this inner force, this mana. So the closer to ancestry to gods means more mana you have. And then wrapping, not like wrapping like physically wrapping around the face. The tattoos wrap around your face. This cloak would wrap around your shoulders. There's another Pacific artwork where fabric is wrapped around a staff. So this idea of wrapping is a form of protecting this mana, which would be important because they'd be using these in battles. So worn like a cape, wrapped around the shoulders during battles and ceremonies. Why would we wear a feather cape during battles? That comes to mind, right? It's not really going to physically protect you, but it'd be extremely intimidating to the person you are battling against because it is showcasing your power. It's saying you have a lot of mana, you are a chief, you're coming at them, right? That's going to be scary. All right, 3 artworks done. Send me 3 note page pictures, please and thank you.